I want to go through the research paper and make a presentation as it relates to the research paper. So I might change my lecture for today and go into something else. But let's continue with the syllabus. You guys were late. By the way, when it comes down to if we start class 30 minutes late, be prepared to stay for an additional 30 minutes. Last week, some of you just left when we started class 45 minutes into the time. So, and some of you just disappeared. When I looked, there was only must have about 3 people on the thing, and we don't have a big class. So it's easy for me to tell when people leave. So I'm going to have a stipulation. If we start late, and my goal is not to go beyond 6, but if we start late, it will mean I need more time to finish the material. Okay, so I'm going to ask that you give me some time to wrap up the class and to finish the material. Let me know, okay? Yes, a hand.
Yeah, sir, I apologize. I know we started late today, but there is a student council event that starts today at 5:45, so I wouldn't be able to stay past 5:45 today.
What student council event is this?
It's a seminar on mental health, on how to avoid burnout, and
Oh,
yes.
this is how to avoid burnout. Like what you have a class from 3 to 6, and there's another um something else that clash. Then what you do is then that seminar, you let them know that I'm going to be there at 6 o'clock because I have to. But
Sir.
okay, fine. I want you to be at this class until 6 o'clock. This
Okay,
class
sir.
is from 3 to 6, and it's very.
Yeah,
I take my class is very important because I
yeah.
spend a lot of time preparing the material for you guys. Let me tell you, I prepare. When I prepare, I prepare. I prepare for classes. My staff will tell you that. So I want you guys to take the classes seriously. It's very
All
important.
right. Noted, sir. Just wanted to make that just wanted to let you know if you see
All
me
right.
drop off early today.
If it's one thing your professor takes seriously, it's coming to class and being on time. That's very important to me. I'm a stickler for that. Okay, and I watch that. It's very and if you miss 30 minutes of class, that goes towards your total amount of you should your total amount of hours you are allowed to miss. It adds up. So say for example, you are only allowed to miss 6 hours, and over the 5 classes you're 30 minutes late. That means you're going to start losing points because you're 30 times 5 is how much. Okay, that it add up, and I watch that. It's very important. Okay, because we're preparing professionals. All right, so let's continue. Now, in terms of extra credit, you will, however, get extra credit if you write a 500-word essay, 500-word summary. And by the way, my classes are easy. Everybody passed my classes. Everybody will tell you that, except maybe 1 or 2 students might fail the course in the past, but they failed not because of anything that I have done. It could be because guess what? They only come to 4 classes, okay? Or they decide to they don't do any coursework and only do the exam. You have to pass the coursework and the exam, okay? Or they sit the exam and answer the first 5 questions and miss the last question, which is worth 35% of the exam. You know what I mean? That's the only reason. But everybody will pass this course. It's easy. But it's not, I'm not going to say it's easy. Critical thinking is never easy because the important thing is not about getting an A or B or a C. The important thing is developing oneself in order to be a value added person in society. Okay. The final exam is worth 40% of the grade. And let me just put this into perspective now as it relates to the research paper. You will submit a research proposal mid-semester on research that each of you will do, exploring the changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs. For class research, changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs. What are we asking? What are the changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs? What were they like then, and what is it now? If there is a change, why or why not? how have attitudes affect and influence policy and behaviors? And then I say, see research proposal and initial study question here. So which we will actually, which I will explore. I don't know if I have time to explore this now. Maybe, I don't think I have. Okay, fine. Let's go to the hyperlink. Open hyperlink. Now, if you click on that, it should take you to the it should take you straight to the hyperlink. Are you seeing the hyperlink?
Yes, sir.
What you guys see on the screen?
It says exploring changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs in Jamaica, a study of socio-political, religious, and
Oh
cultural.
no, okay. You're not seeing the neoliberal.com? The neoliberal corporation?
No.
All right, okay.
Well, it does. It says that there's a hyphen after influences, and then it says the neoliberal corporation.
All right, let's click on this. There is actually a Chantel can help us with that. Can send each of you the link to the study, because I would love each of you to actually do the study yourself, to go in and fill out the questionnaire if you, or fill in. But let's share this screen here with you guys. Are you guys seeing the screen now? You see Bob Marley?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, this is the neoliberal.com. So the study is available on the neoliberal.com website. If you go to the course outline and then click on open in hyperlink, it will take you straight to this website, and the website has the study. So this is the proposal. So let's just say if you're giving me an 8 to 10, by the way, we'll cut it down. You could give it to me in 15 to 20 pages. All right, we'll cut it down to 15 to 20 pages, and then the proposal, I'll cut it, instead of 8 to 10, just give me 5 to 8. How does that sound?
That's a lot better. Thank you.
All right, cool. All right, cool. So we'll do 5 to 8 pages for the midterm proposal, and then for the final, we'll do 15 to 20, okay, instead, or yeah, 15 to 20. All right, but this is the proposal. The research plan. So you're submitting the proposal should resemble something like this: research proposal exploring changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs. And it's the research plan is on valuing African identity through religious affirmations of African traditions. Again, the research plan, we're looking at how do we value, or we're putting it in a positive way. We want to place value on African identity. Again, we want to place a value on African identity, because we're saying that still we live in a global world where there is still not much value that is being placed on African or Afro-Caribbean beliefs. And so we said the research plan, so we want to place value, or we want to value African identity through by exploring religious affirmation of African traditions. So in the research study, we aim to explore changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs in Jamaica and the Caribbean. In the study, what are we doing, or what's the aim? Our aim. So the thing is, when you write this study, I have information available already, which you can copy from, okay? However, except that your context is different. Your population is different, because your population could be people drawn in Portmore, particularly at these places, okay? At the Kingston Church of God or whatever. While for me, it's more, the study I am embarking on is more a wider study, okay? But the population is different. So it's easy. What I'm saying to you guys, I'm not making it as hard, because we're doing it as part of a group together, but we are going to divide up the work so that each of you present your findings based on your own sphere, your own influence, your own population, your own context. looking at the changing attitudes toward Afro-Caribbean beliefs in your own area. So that's the only difference. So the proposal is the same thing. So of course, you're going to, what you're giving me this. But in this research study, what are we aiming? What is the aim? We're aiming to explore changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs in Jamaica and the Caribbean. Okay. But particularly, so when you write your proposal, it's in Jamaica and the Caribbean, but particularly in your own area, and you state what that area is. Okay. So you would write, in this research study, my aim is to explore changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs in Jamaica and the Caribbean, but particularly, and you state the area, Kingston or whatever Kingston area, or whatever area that you are in, whatever area you live in, and so on and so forth, because it's based on your own population, your own context. You're studying your own context. Okay. And of course, we said it's a study of political, religious, and cultural influences. And the study, when you do the study will have an introduction. You present your introduction. Then, of course, you have your cover page, research proposal, exploring changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs. Researcher with yourself, coordinator. You don't have a coordinator, and whatever. Then you have your introduction. In Jamaica, there has historically been a negative perception towards African and indigenous spiritual practices. Again, in Jamaica, there has historically been a negative perception towards African and indigenous spiritual practices, religious beliefs, customs, and faiths that draw influences from urban Indian heritage or African traditions. And of course, I know this to be true, and many of you know that to be true. And of course, that's something that you could include as a question in the study. What has been the attitude on a scale of 1 to 10? What has been your attitude towards Afro-Caribbean belief 10 years ago? Okay, and what it is now on a scale of 1 to 10, whatever the case is. But anyway, as I said to you, in my experience, we've always looked down on Rastafarianism in the context I grew up, the family traditions that I had. We did not embrace Obia, Voodoo, Pocomania, revivalists. We saw Muslim as not the right. Of course, within Christianity, there is always this privilege. I am the way that, okay, no man cometh to the Father except through Christ. So even within Christendom, okay, let's hold on. Even within Christendom, even within Christianity, there is this privilege. We talk about privilege. As a post-colonialist, we are against privilege. The Caribbean position and the Caribbean as part of an invention, what it is invented or what it is today is a result of certain traditions, a tradition of privilege, which continues in various forms today. And I said to you, Mutabaruka said that God is an invention. We'll talk about that. What is he talking about? But, man is not free from the corruption of self, the corruption of this selfishness, this privilege. We have this privilege. It is this privilege that has helped to create the dependency and lack in the Caribbean position or the Black position. This same privilege is found in religious movements and groups, even as they try to outmaneuver and outduel each other. Yes, this privilege. It is this very same privilege that that Jesus on the cross demonstrated in order for us, for men to draw all men unto himself or whatever. He gave up his deity, the privilege of his of his divinity. He gave up his, and I was talking to my uncle some time ago, you know, this division within the church is what is preventing the kind of unity needed in order to realize progress in the world today, because even within religious institutions, in societies, there is this dividedness, because they all have this level of privilege, where they privilege their position, privilege their thought. So, and I say to you, Kant says that human nature, history is a result of the varieties of human natures and circumstances, where human beings have always been brushed with this tendency of privileging themselves, okay, and their ideas, and they have created institutions out of these ideas, which has formulated societies that we now live, that has created dynamics of positions, okay, positions where some men are free and others aren't, some men are better than others. Yes, that those ideas, okay, and institutions that Michel Foucault talks about, like the church and Kant and so on, and the kind of intellectualism that Gramsci talked about, help to support this thing. So we talk about the importance of studying institutions and beliefs and traditions. Rastafarianism, and that's why we have Rastafarianism as a direct result of this privilege. So people, okay, but we'll talk more about that. I won't delve into it yet. Rastafari, because I'm talking about the study that you guys have to present. Rastafarianism, Obia, Voodoo, Pocomania, Poco Church, revivalist Muslim beliefs, they have often been marginalized, deemed as fringe, demonic, unpopular, juxtaposed against the inherited traditions from European colonialism. The Judeo-Christian faith, such as Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, and evangelicalism, has been favored and considered closer to the truth and the ideal. Of course, we live in the New World, which is part of the Western civilization. I said to you, how far do you go back when you study the Caribbean? You don't, okay, you go back as, you don't start from the 1960s, because we are part of a wider civilization, a wider society. However, in the 21st century, with increased exposure, awareness, critical thinking, and a more liberal lifestyle, particularly among the younger generation, it is crucial to investigate whether attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs are changing. So the study aims to explore the shifting attitudes of Jamaicans and the factors contributing to these changes, considering demographic variables such as location, age, educational levels, income status, political affiliation, denominationality, and religious beliefs. What are our research objectives? Okay, of course, your research objective will be the same objective as mine. Okay, so that's what I'm telling you. You don't have the work is not difficult. Okay, the only difference is that you are studying a different population. You're studying the population, but you are now you're doing it in a different context. Okay, that's the only that is what is going to, so the job is easy. I make it easy for you guys. Okay, so when in the proposal that you present to me in March, we'll have research objectives. Number 2, research objectives. I have one, but that's an error. Those are the research objectives. The main objectives of this study are as follows. 1, you want to always have an objective to examine if Jamaican attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs have evolved over time. To determine if specific demographic factors influence changing attitudes, including location, age group, educational levels, income status, political affiliation, denominationality, and religious beliefs. To investigate the potential role of socio-political factors, religious influences, education, pop culture, travel experiences, and exposure in shaping attitudes toward Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean beliefs. To explore perceptions of African religious practices as cultic or occult and their impact on attitudes. So after you have stated your research objectives, then you want to provide the methodology. What's the methodology? Participant selection. So your methodology will include participant selection, a diverse sample of Jamaican individuals representing different demographics, including location. Well, actually, a participant selection will be a diverse sample of Jamaican individuals representing not necessarily different demographics, okay? Different demographics, but, well, representing similar demographics within a particular locale, but different demographics in terms of age. Because as I said to you, I am looking at the whole, you guys are looking at the particular. So you guys, your demographics are smaller. So your demographics would be a little bit similar, okay? Because you're looking at a more smaller group. You're looking at your church, you're looking at your community. So the participant selection, so it won't be a diverse sample of Jamaican. It's a diverse sample of Jamaican of Jamaican individuals, okay? Of similar demographics, similar community, okay, but within a wide age, but formulating a wide age range. So that's what you will have. So it would not say a diverse sample of Jamaican individuals represented different demographics. Okay, yes, different demographics, okay, but within the same locale. All right, the same locale, but different age group. That's very important. The educational levels might be different. The income status is going to be different. The political affiliation is probably going to be different. Denominationality might be similar, but and that include Protestant, Anglican, Roman Catholic, Seventh-day Adventist, Evangelical, Revivalist, Poco, Mormon, Universal. Religious beliefs could be Rastafarianism, Judaism, Satanism, Islam, Nation of Islam, Christianity, atheism, deism, and other will be. So you might be, say for example, you might be in Portmore or Britain, and you might have all these various groups in Britain. The questionnaire development, a research questionnaire will be designed. So you guys will design a questionnaire, and so a research questionnaire will be designed to collect both qualitative and quantitative data. The questionnaire will cover the following sections. Section 1, demographics. You will gather information on on gender, age, location, educational level, income status, etc. Section 2, religious affiliation. Identify participants' religious beliefs and denominationality. 3, attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs. Measure the participants' level of agreement with statements reflecting attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs. 4, additional information, provide participants on opportunity to share their personal experiences, perceptions, and factors influencing their attitude towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs. I need to add something to this. Provide opportunities for the participants to state their attitudes and perceptions towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs between periods. Say, for example, 10 years ago as against now. Optional information, explore participants' political affiliation and any additional thoughts they may have. Data collection, the questionnaire will be distributed through online platforms, social media, your local community centers to ensure wide representation of Jamaican society. The responses will be collected anonymously to maintain confidentiality. Not necessarily, because you will distribute the papers to your friends and family, but of course, um, they would not need to write their name. So yes, there's anonymity that's associated with this study. Data analysis, quantitative data will be analyzed using statistical methods, including descriptive analysis and inferential statistics. Qualitative data will undergo thematic analysis to identify recurring patterns, themes, and insights. You guys will be required to do some readings around this, do some research to find out if anyone has done any writing or reading that surveys Afro-Caribbean attitudes towards Jamaicans over the if any study has been done. I doubt it. What are the ethical considerations? The study will adhere to ethical guidelines, ensuring participant anonymity, informed consent, and voluntary participation. The collected data will be securely stored and used solely for research purposes. By examining, of course, the collected data will be used to support your own findings and your own work. By examining changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs in Jamaica, the study aims to shed light on the impact of socio-political factors, religion, education, pop culture, travel experiences, and exposure on the evolving perceptions of Jamaicans. The findings will contribute to a deeper understanding of how societal changes influence cultural attitudes, promoting inclusivity, tolerance, and cultural heritage preservation. Ultimately, the research aims to encourage a more informed and respectful dialogue surrounding Afro-Caribbean beliefs in Jamaican society. So that is really that's the study, and that will be the study that you will present. And of course, you will have the questionnaire. And there is a sample questionnaire. If you go to this site and if you click on that, it takes you straight to this page. Okay, where you can actually do the questionnaire. And I would love each of you to complete the questionnaire. And this is the questionnaire is actually available. But you guys will do this for yourself. You would not need to give this questionnaire for your own study. Because you will create your own study, and you can create your own questionnaire based on this but with one or two slight changes, because there's something that we need to add to the questionnaire. What has your beliefs changed over the last 15 years? Yes or no? If it has, how has it changed? By answering these questions: positive, not so positive, negative, not so negative, neutral. Something of the sort. What if it did change? What it is today? Again, positive, negative, not so negative. Those I will need to add those two. But so you're going to create a questionnaire. So when you submit your proposal, the proposal will have a questionnaire that you're going to give out to your respondents. You will create the questionnaire, attach it to your proposal at the back of and send it in, and it will have the same questions that I have here that I'm asking you guys to complete. And you can complete. What you guys could do, you could actually complete this survey yourselves. And as you complete the questionnaire, you also want to write the question and the questions down, so that you probably could use it to inform your own questionnaire, so that it looks exactly like this, with the addition of those two questions that I'm asking you to add. What your position before now: positive, not too positive, negative, not too negative, or neutral. Okay, and what it is if it was negative, and what it is now: positive, not too positive, negative, not too negative, neutral. Okay, I want you to add those. That's the only thing that's not on here that you guys will add on yours. And of course, as I said to you guys, the research you're doing is more specific to a particular location, your own sphere of influence, among your own sphere, with your community, where you work or where you worship. You're doing it amongst those groups. So location will be much smaller. But it's each of you. So when each of you complete that study and submit your work, and we combine them, we're looking at the whole gamut. We're looking at a fuller picture as well. So you guys can, this is available on your outline. If you follow the outline, you can get to this page actually. Okay, so that is that. Let's go back. Actually, did you guys see the? Oh no, you guys didn't see the link questionnaire that came up. So let's link. I don't think you did. Did you guys see the questionnaire that came up just now?
No, sir.
I don't know why it's not coming up. Exploring, is this it? Okay, hold on. There we go. Oops. Where am I? Oh, okay. I know where I'm at now. I'm sorry. I am trying to bring up a window. Here we go. Okay, new share. You guys should be seeing it now. Share screen. Are you guys seeing that? Are you seeing the
Yes,
question? Right.
yes.
Once you click on the hyperlink in the course outline, it will take you to the neoliberal.com that has directly to the article that speaks to the questionnaire. I mean, that speaks to the research, the proposal. And then it's actually, there's a picture of the proposal. Once you click on the image, it takes you to the actual questionnaire that you can complete. You can complete it and then go to next. And then next is 6 pages. And you guys can write down the questions. And of course, you guys just need to add 2 more things to your own questionnaire, which is what I just said. Okay. There's a part that says location, rural, urban, city. You will still ask that question. You still add that question. And then where it says specify location, then they can specify the Portmore, whatever, Brayton, Kingston, whatever the case is. So, but so everything actually is perfect. It's, you guys don't need to change anything. You guys can leave everything as is. Just add that question to your proposal, to your questionnaire, and then you guys can do as in terms of how many people you should interview, as many as you would like, but no less than at least 20, no less than 25. Yeah, to get a good amount of people to do research. 25 is good. 25 to 30 would be good. They're no less than 25. So at least interview 25 people, give out 25 research questionnaires, and then you can study them, study the responses based on what you've got back. So that is the research and the midterm paper that you have to do. Let's go back to the I'm gonna go back to where is it? Course outline, new share, back to course outline and share. All right, so that is for the research. As it relates to discussions and lecture topics for the course, Caribbean thought, ideology, and philosophy, the challenge of identity, and the issue of sexuality. I don't know if I'm going to have a guest lecturer, Reverend Hewitt Holmes. I'm not sure. We've had him before, but I have a copy of his lecture. I can actually have you. I have his lecture on a recording, so I can actually provide the lecture for you if he can't come to the lecture. But he talks about the issue of sexuality, poverty and income inequality and opportunity, resistance and dilemmas of social power, the social origins of democratic socialism in Jamaica and the Caribbean. We talk about that. Neoliberal globalization and the Black position. You hear me talk about the Black position in the world. The global South and the global North dynamic. Global South, global North dynamic. I talk about if you want to understand the Caribbean, right? What is the Caribbean or study the Caribbean? Just look at immigration. When you look at immigration, you have an understanding of the Caribbean. It will help you to understand Caribbean people today and their realities. When you look at how travel happens, when people from the global south travel to the global north, okay, how they are treated, the kind of policy, okay, that countries have towards people who travel from the Caribbean or certain countries where you have more black people. The blacker you are, the blacker the country, the more black and brown people that's within a particular place or country. Okay, policy towards travel, immigration policy is much more draconian. Okay, of course, maybe because black and brown countries are more poorer. The countries that have more black people and brown are poorer than countries that don't, or not. Okay, probably that's the case. I don't know. But when you look at immigration policy and how travel happens, and how how the reference, that's the reference, how they refer to, how they call it, how certain peoples are described. Okay, how they describe people coming from the global south into the global north, the use of aliens and illegal aliens. You don't hear that word being meted out to certain people coming from certain Anglo-Saxon countries. So of course, immigration is an important concept when you're studying Caribbean, and Caribbean. In fact, the Caribbean is a result of immigration. Okay. The challenge of identity and the issue of sex, poverty and inequality, resistance and dilemma of social power. We're at American penetration, Haiti, and justice. American penetration, Haiti, and justice. And I said to you, the trope of penetration is important. Let me hurry up, we're getting late. Science and technology. I wrote a paper many years ago in 2010 that science and technology is the key. From 2010, and I said that Jamaica needs to spend a lot. We need Caribbean people, we need to invest in technology. And I don't think there was a serious investment in, we need to read this. I mean, at the time I was saying we need to invest in science and technology. But I don't think the kind of investment that the Caribbean need in science and technology is the kind of investment that we're getting. And I don't think that there has been any will and any sacrifice in order to facilitate the kind of investment in science and technology. Maybe now, but historically they have not been. So therefore we are always behind. We are always playing catch up. The Caribbean have to do forward thinking. And of course, the Prime Minister talked about the realities of the Caribbean. And of course, I said that I was going to talk about that because on Twitter, on social media, he gave a presentation talking about the fact that the younger generation cannot be divorced from the fact that where we get money from. We get money from you. He was making a point that we get money from you. From you, the Jamaican, from you, the Caribbean. Okay? We get money from the taxes that come in from your work. But of course, there's a deeper story to that. Because it means then you have to invest in the poorest of the Jamaican people. It means you have to spend on Jamaican so that Jamaican can work towards pumping money in the economy so that the government can spend to continue to develop the economy. Okay? So we have to go, Jamaica and Caribbean countries, we are starting from behind. But there has to be some investment in the people, in the Jamaican people, in the Caribbean people, in order to make them competitive, so that they can provide the kind of revenue. Because when the economy is active, when the people are active, so the government have to invest in the people in order so that the people can generate the revenues. Okay. But of course, there's always whether or not the government spends wisely on the funds that they have received. Spending wisely is important. But anyway, those are some of the points we're going to take up. Slavery, maroonage, emancipation, and humanization. Nationalism, including the Haitian War of Independence and the Cuban War of Independence. Pan-Africanism, religion, social consequences and empowerment. Colonialism, decolonization, and we talk about colonization have to do with control. To colonize something is to control it. To decolonize, so when you're and Franz Fanon talk about colonization being the depersonalization of humanity. So in order the depersonalization. So what's decolonization? Decolonization is the restoration, because colonization involves stripping away the human. Colonization is to reimagining and restoring the human. Okay? We're going to talk about post-colonialism and the bureaucratic phenomena. What's that? We're going to look at strategy and systems, slavery, feudalism, neoliberalism, Marxism, and capitalism. Capitalism versus dependent capitalism. Socialism versus democratic socialism, and neoliberalism versus liberalism. Immigration and brain drain and American politics. The last time we had Mr. John Anthony Castro, who's running for president, who came and talked to the class. I don't know if he'll be able to have time. He's in a lawsuit right now. He was recently indicted by the federal government on tax charges. We're not sure if we're going to be able to have him on the show. He did run in New Hampshire. I think he came second to last. But I said that that's the American way, the opportunity to be able to run in an election for the highest seat, irrespective of your color and your creed. But I said, yet those with money and inherited power continue to hold sway over the populace. Okay, so that's the point we want to explore. Deconstructivism and critical history and philosophy. When we do Caribbean thought, it's part of deconstructivism and critical history. I have introduction to podcasting. I don't know if you're going to be able to do that, but I sometimes provide. We will discuss that briefly at the end of the class if we have time. Regenerative agriculture, science, innovation, social media, and digital technology as opportunities and threats moving towards competitiveness. We'll talk about that. I'm going to skip this. You guys can look at the rest of the discussion and the rest of these here. I don't think I need to I don't think we need to go through some of these. In terms of the reading list, all the reading material is here. Reading list, recommended reading, of course, neoliberalism, globalization, income inequality, poverty, and resistance. That's the reading text. What's this? What's this? Oh, the Caribbean Reader is right here. You can get the Caribbean Reader. Let me see if open up the Caribbean Reader, open up hyperlink. This is if you go over to you can actually get some of these by clicking on hyperlink. The hyperlink will take you to a lot of books. So what I did, that hyperlink, if you click on that hyperlink, it takes you to a lot of resources and materials. Okay, it takes you to the New Caribbean Thought Reader by Brian Meeks. That Journeys in Caribbean Thought by the Paget Henry Reader, Journeys in Caribbean Thought, Beyond Coloniality, Citizenship and Freedom in Caribbean Race. So if you click on that hyperlink, it will take you to this page with a lot of material, which is easy. In fact, let me share my screen so that you have that. If you click on that hyperlink, the hyperlink takes you to this. Takes you to all these materials. And many of these materials, you can just click on it and it takes you. This is Google Books. It takes you straight. It gives you the entire book, the entire edition. Say, for example, let's click on the New Caribbean Thought Reader. The New Caribbean Thought Reader opens up the entire book. Caribbean Thought Reader by Brian Weeks. University of West Indies. That's one of our main texts that I would like you to read. And in fact, the book starts with an introduction entitled by Brian Meeks called On the Bump of a Revival. And it says, in the brilliant afternoon sun, in the brilliant afternoon sun, in the brilliant afternoon sun, this is the Caribbean Reader by Brian. It's edited by Brian Meeks and Folk Lindahl. Edited means it's a collection of works. So anytime you have a collection of works, you have an editor who is responsible for putting the works together, and each chapter has a different author. So Brian Meeks, it's a very good book. It says, and the book starts in 1983. It's Caribbean Reader, but my Caribbean Reader starts before 1983. But they start there from 1983, which is okay. But I'm going to start it before that. But he started in 1983, in the brilliant afternoon sun of October 19, 1983, on the highest parade ground of the old fort, of the old fort recently renamed after his father, Maurice Bishop, Prime Minister of Revolutionary Grenada, was shot to death alongside some of his closest comrades. At the other end of the Soviet-built AK, at the other end of the Soviet-built AK-47 atomic rifles were soldiers of the People's Revolutionary Army, of which Bishop, only days before, had been the respected commander-in-chief. In a bizarre sequence of events, the exact order of which remains an issue of bitter dispute 16 years later, Bishop's prestige had, in the eyes of many of his supporters, in the ruling New Jewel movement, plummeted from the unassailable position of Jefe Maximo. He had in the weeks before been placed under house arrest and was now being described as a potential counter-revolutionary. To the average man in the streets, this volte-face, without either reason or explanation, and without any prior warning, was completely unacceptable. Firm supporters of the revolution rallied to its leaders and leading symbol of the social and economic gains of the previous hectic 4 years. Firm opponents, many of whom had always been way of the cocky, free-willing clan of the Jewel Boys, saw the detention as proof of their worst fears, so on and so forth. What are we talking about here? You guys can read this. Brian Meeks starts with a picture of the Caribbean in 1983 with Maurice Bishop, who was hailed as a revolutionary, the father of independent Grenada, was assassinated. But days before, he was hailed as the hero, but later was assassinated by some of his own comrades. The same thing happened in Haiti. The same thing happened in Togo. The same thing could have happened in Jamaica. Okay. Where those countries seeking independence, a kind of independence that was socialist or Marxist, or a kind of independence that was anti-Western, created a problem for the status quo, the dominant class. For post-industrial countries that wanted a world order within their own eyes. And so because people like Bishop, people like Michael Manley, people like Fidel Castro, people like Walter Rodney, yes? Because these people wanted an independence, an ideology that was anti-Western, anti-European, that was more Eastern, or whatever the case might be. It created a problem for the former colonial masters who are still colonial masters. And in the end, you find many nationalists met their demise, met their end, whether they were assassinated, whether they were kidnapped. Say for example, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, he was kidnapped in 1961, 1962. Who was it? Epifanio from Togo. I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly. I got it for you. Epifanio, whatever the first prime minister of independent Togo was assassinated. They assassinated Walter Rodney. Because so when you ask where do you begin to study the Caribbean, of course, yeah, we can start in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, where there was this nationalist fight. Some people were fighting for independence through wars, others through ceremonies. But of course, for me, I start the Caribbean reader starts there, but I start before that. I will start before that. Okay. But you can read this book. This book is quite interesting. It's a book for you guys to consider. That's one of the materials for class. So please get a hold of this book. Another book that you will need to consider for the class, of course, I said neoliberalism, globalization, neoliberalism. I don't know if it's available. Anyway, but let's go through it. Homi Bhabha, Location of Culture. And this is Homi Bhabha's Location of Culture. This book is very important to our studies. She talks about the center and the periphery. Kenneth Clark, The Dilemmas of Social Power. Dilemmas of Social Power. Kenneth Clark, Dilemmas of Social Power. The Dark Ghetto. This book is old, but it's like my Bible. You see, this book is like my Bible. But we will consider this book. If you type it, it should come up. Some of the materials are free because it's such an old book. We will consider that book. James D. Cockcroft and Andre Gonder Frank and Dale L. Johnson, Dependence and Underdevelopment. The book is here somewhere. Some of that book you may not be able to get. It's a recommended reading. It's not required. Mike Davis, Planet of the Slums. Where is that book? I have it somewhere. Mike Davis, Planet of the Slums. But it's about Brazil. And it was about Brazil and the slum conditions that they have. And of course, Brazil is an interesting situation. But they have been and how globalization has affected them and the issue of abject poverty. Devon Dick, The Cross and the Machete. That's a powerful book. Written Devon Dick, The Cross and the Machete. Native Baptists, Identity, Ministry, and Legacy. That's a book that you guys, that's in your reading. I have included a lot of material for you guys to read. Jane Anna Gordon, Journeys into Caribbean Thought. It's a book in the US, but it's a very good book. And I have links to the book right there. Frantz Fanon, Black Skins, White Mask. Frantz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, translated from French by Richard Philcox. A very good book. I think I have that book here, Wretched of the Earth. That is not a recommended reading. It is a required reading as well. This is required reading. This one is required. Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon. And my book, Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance, that's recommended. That's a required reading. Eli Kaduri wrote a book on nationalism. If you study Caribbean thought, we have to delve into we have to study nationalism, or we have to cover that topic. The issue of nationalism is important. The study of the nation, the study of become part of the Caribbean, the coming to be. We were not Caribbean thinkers. We were part of that whole nationalist movement. Okay, we have come to spur on that nationalist movement. So we will look at Eli Kaduri's book, the fourth expanded edition, Nationalism, the Caribbean Community Beyond Survival. Kingston. It's a book Ian Randall publishes, another local book here, The Caribbean Community, Contending with Destiny, the Caribbean in the 21st Century. That's a good book to read. The Black Jacobins, that's a required text. Very good book. Every one of you should read that book. That's one piece of writing that all post-colonialists should read. The Black Jacobins. Okay, C.L.R. James is not from Haiti. He's from Trinidad, but he wrote his magnum opus was this book, The Black Jacobins, talking about how Haiti got independence and talking about Oliver Toussaint, Oliver Toussaint, who helped to secure the freedom. Jamaica Kincaid, A Small Place. That's a book. Jamaica Kincaid, the book A Small Place, is a book about Antigua, and the film Life and Death about Jamaica is based on the book A Small Place, but the realities are similar. So that's why we said that when we study Caribbean, and when you start to look at the diverse currents and how you can take one current and fit it into another and talk about that same place, and you think it's somewhere, you're talking about Antigua when you're talking about Jamaica, and the language and so on, especially the English-speaking Caribbean. In fact, if you ever go to Antigua and have a conversation with you would think that you're talking to another Jamaican, the way how they speak and the inflections and so on. The Modern Caribbean, a book called The Modern Caribbean, regional W.A. Lawson, Religion and Race, African and European Roots in Conflict, a Jamaican Testament. Caribbean Popular Culture by John Lent. Main Currents in Caribbean Thought, The Historical Evolution of Caribbean Society in its Ideological Aspects. I believe you guys should read these. If you guys might not read everything on the syllabus, but you will always have the syllabus with you. And at some point in your journeys, you should get it. And if you guys can read some of these books, read them, or these texts, please do. The New Caribbean Thought Reader by Brian Weeks. We just looked at that earlier. Keith and Novella Nelson, The Social Origins of Democratic Socialism in Jamaica. Good book for you guys if you want to look at the democratic socialism in Jamaica. That's a very good place to start. Slavery, Social Death, or Communal Victory, A Critical Appraisal of Slavery and Social Death, by Orlando Patterson. It's a good book for you guys to read. How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney. Now, that is a recommended reading. I didn't put recommended reading, but it is recommended. I'm telling you, you want to read that book. You want to read How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. That book was banned for a long time. It wasn't available. In fact, in some places, it's still difficult to get. You want to read that book, okay? You want to read How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, all right? And when you study Caribbean thought, you read that book. Walter Rodney was a Caribbean thinker, but he's writing about how Europe underdeveloped Africa, because the underdevelopment of Africa is part of the experience and the reality and the coming to be of Caribbean. Yes? Garnet Roper wrote the book Caribbean Theology and Public Theology. You want to read that book? That's recommended. That's recommended. That's recommended. So Walter Rodney book is recommended, and Garnet Roper's book is recommended. Dread Jesus. Dread Jesus. Some people talk about Black Jesus. For some people, it's very important for you to have a Black Jesus in the church because they want to be able to identify the Jesus that we have is a Jesus that's created in the mold of a people that represents that people. That is the Jesus that we worship and that we continue to today. Okay, where a Jesus and a religion that bears no resemblance to the experience of Caribbean people or to their identity. Okay, but of course, now there's a move to now there is a move to make Jesus like us, to make him like us. But people would say, no, 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 you can't touch Jesus. You can't touch him. This is how he's supposed to look. When you said, they say how when you say how he's supposed to look, what are you talking about? Okay, who made him? Okay, the story that we have of the reality of Christ, that reality came from who? Man, or did it come from outside of him? Yet, God, we understand that God communicates with man. We talk about the Bible being the word of God, the inspired word of God. And inspiration is a conflicting idea to the study of Caribbean thought, in a sense, and critical thinking. Because we are suspicious of this inspiration. Because as I said to you, men have used religion or appealed religion and have created religion in such a way that give themselves appeal, that give themselves certain privileges. And we have even created inspiration within our understanding to solidify and to justify our privileges of the thing being special over anything else. We'll talk about that later on. Okay, we're coming to we have 4 minutes left. But I'm going to go until 5 or 15. I stop at 5:15. Give me 15 minutes and we'll wrap up. Greek life and thought. Why do I have a book about Greek life and thought? Greek life? Are we studying Caribbean thought? Caribbean studies? No, what I said to you earlier. Notice the course is called what? Caribbean thought. And we talk about we are part of the Caribbean. When you study in Caribbean, the reality of the Caribbean as an invention, part of a wider experience, part of a life and part of a society that has been inherited from way back, from Greco-Roman days and beyond that. Okay? And you look at how Greek life and Greek ideology have found its way in the kind of religion that we practice today, that has been inherited, which has transplanted African religion. So of course you want to look at Greek life and thought. You want to look at Hisia. Now those aren't they aren't recommended and they aren't required, but but I put them as part of a wider, something that you may want to consider to read. Greek life and Greek thought, very important, because part of what we have today, part of knowledge, part of the information we have today comes to us from Greek. Okay? Critical issues in Caribbean development, Occidentalism and Orientalism. What's that? Ooh, the West in the eyes of its enemies. What is Orientalism? Edward Said talks about Orientalism and Occidentalism. That's very important. Okay? Orientalism and Occidentalism is a kind of ethnocentrism. Same thing as Orientalism. When we study Caribbean thought, yes, we will also delve into ethnocentrism and privilege, because we are also looking at Afrocentric ideas as against Eurocentric ideas, and the dynamics of these, and the society and the world in which we live, and how one supersedes the other, or how they compete or clash. But when we talk about the West in the eyes of its enemies, in other words, Middle Eastern people or Eastern people, their views about the West or the Western world, they see the West as irreligious and ungodly. While in Orientalism, which is the East in the eyes of its enemies, Orientalism, yes, is the East in the eyes of its enemies, would be the West. So the West views the East as unintelligent. That is Orientalism. They're unintelligent. They're simple. So that's Western ethnocentric ideology, or the ethnocentric beliefs about the East as against the West, how the East view the West and how the West view the East. That's what we're talking about when you look at Orientalism and Occident. So you want to read these two books as you study Caribbean thought. It's not required to read it, but I would add it as a recommended reading. These Ian Baruma and Edward Said, these are post-colonialist thinking in a sense, or they talk about Occidentalism and ethnocentrism. Sorry, Occidentalism and Orientalism. And remember what I have said about Orientalism and Occidentalism. Orientalism and Occidentalism are really ethnocentric ideas contained in various societies. Okay, Western society in the Occidentalism, the West, the East is suspicious of the West. Okay, the East is suspicious of the West. It views the West as irreligious in a sense, while in Orientalism, the East is suspicious of the West. Sorry, the West is suspicious of the East. Okay, and it treats and regards the East as simpletons or unintelligent. That is the idea of Occidentalism and Orientalism. The dead yard, I think so these are some of the materials. Louise Bennett, there is a Caribbean comedian. I have some videos of her. You can there's a hyperlink that you can click on and open up some of these videos of some of the video, so you can do some external readings. So the syllabus have a lot of hyperlinks where you can click on and open the hyperlink. It takes you straight to the page, and you can feast yourself. The Haitian Revolution, the cost of corruption. These are all hyperlinks. Caribbean thought essay paper topics. Now, this is not relevant to you right now because in the past, the students would have had to write essays. You don't have to write, but I'm leaving them attached to this paper for your own personal reflection. Okay, your own personal reflection, and so on. You can look over them according to Life and Death. Jamaica have had to creatively respond to the negative effects of globalization that have weakened its ability to remain economically viable and independent. Illustrate some ways Jamaicans have been creative and discuss whether these are effective to realize the dream of the decolonized man. We will answer this question. We will watch the film, and I will ask you the question, and we will discuss this question after we watch the film. Now, according to a respondent in the film, the Caribbean leaders were weak-kneed and lacked vision, placing blame squarely on the politicians of the 1960s to the 1990s for allowing structural adjustment and neoliberal globalization that destroyed their milk industry. This is juxtaposed with Michael Manley, who justified his decision to borrow money from the IMF, saying his hands were tied. Who is responsible for the economic failures of the Caribbean? Use the film to provide a response to these reflections in your groups. Okay, we will ask those questions, but of course, it's not, we will just have a general discussion about these. Globalization is said to be the sine qua non, the sine qua non, the ideal. Sine qua non is the ideal of economic development and prosperity. Sorry, globalization is not the ideal of economic development and prosperity. That was my conclusion in my study, which I produced in the book, because it has dehumanized small post-colonial economies, which have largely struggled to maintain socioeconomic independence and wealth, realization of the nation, and carve its own path towards economic prosperity. Fanon writes that the colonized, underdeveloped man is today a political creature in the most global sense of the term. What does he mean by that? What does Fanon mean and he said that in Wretched of the Earth. What does he mean? The colonized, and that will be in the exam. The colonized, underdeveloped man is today a political creature in the most global sense of the term. Now, that was Fanon writing in 1960s. Does that pertain today? Is the post-colonial man still underdeveloped? Is he still a political creature? And I will say, yes, he is still a political creature because of the ongoing strategy through policy, various economic policy throughout history to make the Caribbean and the post-colonial man, the former colonized, uncompetitive and backward using debt or through various international policies. Okay, we talk about the poorest places in the world today are people that the formerly colonized people. So today, and you look at what's going on in Haiti today. Okay, and all over the world, where, say for example, the U.S. Imposes an economic embargo on some countries that it feels is anachronistic, or runs incongruous to its political and economic ideals. You think, look what's going on in the Middle East. In Russia today. Russia is at war with Ukraine, a former colony, because it's trying to reassert itself and to dominate and make example of a smaller, formerly colonized country. So Fanon's writing continue to hold true for us today, not just in the Western world, but even in the East. What does Fanon mean by this, and what implications follow from this determination? The colonized, underdeveloped man is today a political creature. Explain the difference between the two predominant ideological positions and power blocks that affected the Caribbean nationalist thinking, and state how these positions affected Caribbean struggles and the Caribbean thought for drive for self-determination and sovereignty. The difference between two predominant ideological positions. What are we talking about here? Explain the difference between two predominant ideological positions and power blocks that affected the Caribbean nationalist thinking. What are we talking about? Capitalism and what? Communism. Okay. Bob Marley says, we don't look to capitalism in Who Shot the Sheriff. We don't look to capitalism and Marxism. We look to the I. Okay. The hope for him was in something that was religious. He doesn't look to anything economical. And of course, the Caribbean reader that we read earlier, we talk about AK-47 and the Soviets. We talk about the Soviets. Soviet represents the East. It represents communism, socialism, as against the US represents, and Germany and so on represents the West, capitalism. So when we talk about explain the difference between the two predominant ideological positions and power blocks that have affected the Caribbean's nationalist thinking and drive, and state how these positions affected Caribbean struggles and Caribbean striving for self-determination and sovereignty, we're talking about the two power blocks, capitalism and communism. That, when we look at the 1970s and 80s in Jamaica, that was what created the instability in Jamaica, the conflicts between the communists and the capitalists, the Eastern support and the West. That has always also affected the Caribbean. The Caribbean, we said that, we talk about violence. Violence is more effective than non-violence in resisting neoliberal globalization and creating real social change. We talk about violence. To what extent has the Caribbean as a region achieved power? Again, to what extent has the Caribbean as a region achieved actual power? What am I talking about? In the book Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance, and also in the book The Dark Ghetto, Kenneth Clark talks about the experience of freedom. It's freedom in the right direction. And if I could find it, he talks about the experience of freedom is freedom in the right direction. Let me see if I could find it here. And I'm wrapping up because I know I'm wrapping up. The role of the involved, blah, 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 blah. I can't find it. Come on. But he talks about, he defines freedom in those terms. Where are we? Violence is blah, blah, blah. Is there, Where are we? To what extent has, right, so freedom, he defines freedom as the realization, to measure freedom. He says, Kenneth Clark asked the question, he said that we have to ask the question, to what extent has the Caribbean as a region achieved actual power? It is the ability to wield actual power that determines the extent of the independence and the freedom that we have received. So when you start, okay, fine. So when we start to look at the Caribbean, we ask those self-questions. To what extent has the Caribbean as a region achieved actual power? Means to what extent our ability to be able to wield power and to vote with our dollar. We talk about, in economics, we talk about the power of the dollar, the ability to vote with your dollar. That's an economic concept. The ability to vote with your dollar, or to, in other words, and we talk about the power of your dollar, the power of your currency, the strength of your currency. And remember, part of Caribbean, part of Jamaica's experience of globalization was to neoliberalize. And part of that was to reduce the efficacy and the strength of its currency, weaken the Jamaican dollar, because the Jamaican dollar is not supposed to be as strong as the US. So that's, and you know, and the day when we devalue our currency was a bad move. From that, the slide it went, and it started to slide. So that now we are heavily dependent on external and foreign dollars and foreign activity. Is there a Caribbean identity? If so, what does that look like, given the discussions about individuals and a group right and group rights? Is there a Caribbean identity? If so, what does that look like, given the discussion about individual and group rights? If not, why not? And what does that mean for the fight for self-determination and self-governance? And by the way, you're going to hear me talk about what has dogged the Caribbean, or what that the Caribbean people shot themselves in their foot when they decided to go it alone. Because there was a move in the 1950s leading up to the Treaty of Chaguaramas for all the Caribbean countries. Was it the Treaty of Chaguaramas? Oh, sorry, Federation for the Jamaica, for the Caribbean countries, some Caribbean countries, to get to develop independence and to develop a federation. But there was this selfishness and privilege that crept in, where all the nationalists from the various countries wanted to control their own little domains. But little did they know what was happening. That the kind of independence that the Caribbean wanted was needed in order to survive what was coming, neoliberal globalization, and the competition that ensues, was a kind of Caribbean unity, a kind of independence where each Caribbean country, island, would have developed an independence, and they would morph into a form and a federation. But no, they all decided to scrap the independence, and Trinidad and Barbados up to today blame Jamaica, but that's not necessarily true. But they said that some of the Jamaicans and so on wanted to go it alone. But the fact of the matter is, we shot ourselves in the foot, got independence, and went on our own way. But then by the 1970s, when the oil crisis met, when we were met with the oil crisis, it required a kind of Caribbean unity that we never had. And fine, we decided to develop our own independence. But during the oil crisis, what did the Caribbean do as a region? They each went to the IMF individually. They could have come together, okay, to determine the kind of loans that they need and come up with a strategy. But no, they went their own separate way to negotiate loans with the IMF, the World Bank, with the international regime. The very same people who now they are going to be competing with. They went to get loans from the IMF, the World Bank, or whatever the case, or international regime, from the post-industrial country. The same people who granted them their independence, the same people who are competing, who they're competing with, and think that they were going to get a good deal. I never thought that they could have done it another way, developed some other strategy. You'll be asked to identify several thinkers from the Caribbean or its diaspora that have contributed to Caribbean thought, and complete a biography of one of the thinkers, tracing their history and struggle, and explain how their ideology was developed and what contributions they have left on the Caribbean or on you. Discuss how their influence has shaped Caribbean thought, and highlight whether this had any positive or negative impact on you or the Caribbean at large. Of course, you don't have to do that. This is just general questions for you to consider, that we will consider, or that you can consider. Is it true that the efficacy of the resistance movement against neoliberal globalization can only be determined by the extent to which it has realized actual power? What is meant by actual power? And discuss whether or not this is true, and if so, to what extent? If it is not true, why not? And what does that mean for the resistance movement? And what other efforts or agency can be applied with better outcomes? Neoliberal globalization is said to have propped up the wealth of the few over the many, and turned former colonies into indebted dependent states. How has neoliberal globalization done this? And what does that mean for their own futures? Neoliberal globalization. We talk about, next week we're going to begin by talking about penetration. Neoliberal globalization has opened up the economies of the global south so that more penetration can happen. But penetration was supposed to happen from the global north to the global south, and from the global south to the global north. But that's not what happened. Most of the penetrating is being done from the global north to the global south, where they flood their economies with goods, with media, with technology. But very few penetration is happening from the global south to the global north. It suggests the power dynamic at play. The power dynamic at play between countries of the global north and countries of the global south, or former colonies that continue to be penetrated today through various international strategy, okay, or Pharisaicalism. Do as I say, but not as I do, where certain countries and certain bodies get to apply international rules when they feel as if they want to apply these rules. That's the bureaucratic phenomenon. That's the Pharisaicalism. That continues today. But that's part of, we live in a competitive world. And what has dogged the Caribbean, it is this foolhardy position. It is this pie in the sky, as if all men are nice, as if everybody is good. They didn't realize that they are part of a global machinery that is and as such, when they engage in international negotiations, it has to be done with the understanding that they are in a highly competitive atmosphere, and so they have to advocate for their people in such a way that puts their people at an advantageous position, or put them in a position where they can protect any advantages that they can get. We're going to identify current and emerging trends in the 21st century and discuss whether and how the Caribbean is affected by or affect these trends. We talk about the vulnerability of the Caribbean based on its size and where it is. You want to consider the statement by Lewis Gordon that the Caribbean region, given its smallness and vulnerability, has been on the receiving end of the momentous events that characterize this age. If the Caribbean is at the receiving end of events, how can Caribbean people have any thought or become meaningful actors and creators in their own history and the history at large, or the history of the world? The statement by Lewis Gordon, saying that the Caribbean region, given its smallness and vulnerability, has been on the receiving end of the momentous events that characterize this age. Hence, the Caribbean is an invention. If the Caribbean is at the receiving end of events, how can Caribbean people have any thought or become meaningful actors and creators in their own history and the history of the world? How does the church and faith or religious consciousness within the Caribbean affect the work of activists to end period poverty? That's another question to consider. Shirley Ann Weeks suggested in her interview that the church and ideas about sexual identity and masculinity affected her work to end period poverty due to cultural views surrounding what girls and boys can talk about and how they could relate and how they should relate. There is actually a recording, a video podcast that I did with Shirley Ann Weeks, which I probably am going to redo and make available for you guys to watch. The Caribbean is made up of largely dependent capitalist states. But since the explosion of information and globalization, more countries are becoming more modern and has transplanted their dependency. Is this an accurate socioeconomic analysis of the Caribbean? And what are the factors and forces responsible for this transformation? Okay, that's a question to consider for this class. The Negro is not any more than the white man. What is your reading of this by Fanon, and how has the Black and brown people's realization of the nation expressed by this? If the world is in a constant state of tension between peoples and places, then what value can we give to any equitable balance, since society is ordered within class and racial struggle that is always at odds with the other? Another point to consider: the law is not a shackle. How would you approach what former Prime Minister of Jamaica, P.J. Patterson, is asserting here in his statement to Parliament in 1998? Again, I don't know if it was in 1990. It could be 1993. I don't think it was in 1998. I think it was early. I think it was in 1993. The law is not a shackle, but I'll have to check that. Or it could be 1998. How would you approach what former Prime Minister of Jamaica, P.J. Patterson, said? We are not capitalists or communists. Rasta is our religion. Bob Marley in Who Shot the Sheriff reimagines and reinvent the Black man as the consummate antagonist, opposing the polarities of capitalism and communism. Again, we are not capitalists or communists. Rasta is our religion. That's according to Bob Marley in Who Shot the Sheriff, who is here reimagining and reinventing the Black man as the consummate antagonist, opposing the polarities of capitalism and communism, concluding that they subscribe to a consciousness within themselves that envisions Rasta as the ultimate, Rastafari, the embodiment of the Black Jesus, a hero like that of the Archaeans. Achilles, or the Muslims, Emmanuel. What is Bob Marley getting at here when he says Rasta is our religion, moving from economics to a personal or a people's religion? Very important point. Compare a SWOT, complete a SWOT analysis of the Caribbean or Jamaica. What vision or goals can you create from your analysis of SWOT of Jamaica, the Caribbean? How far must we go when studying the Caribbean? And of course, I probably alluded to that in part of the discussion, but how far must we go when studying the Caribbean? Brian Meeks started his work in 1983. Okay, I would go even further. Okay, I would start from the Iliad. The Iliad was written by Homer, or it's said to have been written by Homer, talking about Achilles and the gods and so on and so forth. That love story, or sorry, that war story. What resemblance does the Caribbean family, what resemblance does the Caribbean family bears with its British antecedents? And did the African ancestors have any form of family that included any structure that influenced Europeans? This is a very important question, you know. What resemblance does family bears with its British antecedents? And did the African ancestors have any form of family that included any structure that influenced Europeans? Why am I asking that question? A very important question, because we are led to believe that African families never had a family structure, a tight unit, or it was confusing and conflicting and cohabiting and non-consenting and so on and so forth. But where we get that from? But you know, when you read Edith Clarke, My Mother Who Fathered Me, and Rex Nettleford in the foreword, you would get that feeling. But as they try to explain why some communities exhibit certain behaviors, or why certain communities are organized, their conception of the family is one that is different from other parts of the country. That is not European, that's not British, with a mother and a father or nuclear family. The embrace of the nuclear family is not, it's more extended. What's going on there? And of course, part of the explanation, part of the explanation is that it's because many of the it stems from their African tradition, as if African traditions are concept of the family is loosely based on some conflicting, confusing organization. And I say to you, not necessarily the case, because when you look at some of the slaves coming from Senegal, Gambia, like Dottie Bookman, they were religious, and they read the Quran, and they were guided by the Quran and by family, the kind of family that existed even in Europe, in some European cultures. So it was not fair to say that African unions or African traditions, their family, it was not nuclear, or it wasn't organized in a certain way. It was more conflicting and confusing, based on concubinage and illegitimate, inherited from Africa. Did Edith Clarke do a study of Africans before slavery that provided any lenses on their family which resembled the of Caribbean peoples? Was there any structure in African life that was disrupted by European influence? What basis do we have to define African family life in some communities and African experience to say Africans practice a form of illegitimacy when that was not the experience? For Africans had religion, culture, and family life that acknowledged the man and woman as integral to raising the children. Some Africans practiced a form of Christianity that valued monogamy Africans cannot be understood as one people, but were in themselves tribal, with separate beliefs and identities that cannot be compared as a whole with its African diaspora. And sometimes when people start to study Africa, they study the people as a whole, when actually that may be wrong. So what credence can we give to family or sociological studies that explain Caribbean behaviors from an African history taken within the whole? And finally, it is said that to study Caribbean thought is to explore Caribbean within a civilization that has come to be known as the Western civilization. The Caribbean, as part of a new world, within that civilization, therefore, has connections that have influenced its ideology, practices, present realities, and possibly future. So therefore, to study the Caribbean must begin with a study of the foundations of knowledge and the hegemony of faith. So how accurate is this assessment about the Caribbean's place in the world and faith in the future? Finally, the course requires that the student understands that his or her thinking will be challenged as a way to begin critically, to begin critical thinking, or to think critically, to begin to think critically. Again, let me say that again. The course requires that the student understand that his or her thinking will be challenged as a way to begin to think critically about and building on academic concepts that is geared towards serving the world today to solve tomorrow's challenges. The student will utilize 21st century trends and thinking to update his learning and how it is formulated and presented. So the students, you may use social media platforms and other digital and social technology with verifiable credibility to support your arguments and presentations, since we now live in the information and tectonic age that transcends how we interpret, receive, and send information. The Caribbean must also get with the times, and learning cannot be devoid of this experience in current reality. And that's the end of the syllabus. And on the syllabus, there is an addendum to the course. You guys can read that addendum. I won't go into it. You guys can read the addendum. There's an attachment. Talks about the lecturer. There's a poll question, and so on and so forth. But I think that's about it. And I will stop my screen share. And just so you know, I had a lecture prepared for you guys. It's entitled, where is it? There we go. 1 second, just before you guys go, share my screen. I'm going to share my screen just one last time here. We should have, this is what I wanted to do with you guys today. But what for next week, we will do this. We will begin this lecture next week. Caribbean Thought Lecture 2024 Semester 2. Topic, lecture on conceptualizing the course. We're going to be looking at critical thinking and its importance to the study of the Caribbean. Critical thinking and its importance to the study of the Caribbean. These are the questions to consider for next week's class. 1. What is the Caribbean and what is the socio-economic context? The Caribbean is an invention of the 20th century. And of course, we're talking about dependency. The words that come to mind when we talk about Caribbean: dependency, uncompetitive, developing, paradise, poverty, black and brown, penetratable. 2. Where is the Caribbean? Where is the Caribbean? And are the Caribbean peoples American? We said the Caribbean is part of the New World. See, what is critical thinking and how is it important to the study of Caribbean thought? That is where we will zero in on. We'll take up much of the time next week on that, Okay, of course, we said that the Caribbean as an invention. That word is very vital. The Caribbean as an invention, very important. And I said, it's Norman Gervin who said that in the Caribbean Reader, but the Caribbean Reader was edited by Brian Meeks, but Norman Gervin was contributing to a chapter and defined the Caribbean as that. That definition comes from him thinking critically about Caribbean. Okay. And finally, do we have any urban Indian heritages in the Caribbean which challenges our African thought? And of course, we can begin by looking at, have we misunderstood our heritage in Jamaica? So we will begin. It's an 8-page lecture topic which is already available, but I will teach from this next week, and and there are some links. I will also bring up some of the links for class next week, and I will I will try to redo every week. I will try and remind you guys about the research that we're doing. So we'll pick up next week, and we will begin by looking at conceptualizing the course, critical thinking and its importance to the study of the Caribbean. Okay, and that is where we will end class today, guys. Thank you so much. Any question or final thought before we wrap up? That's it? All right. Now, just so you know, lecture 1, the first lecture that we did, is available if you go to the my YouTube channel and go to Caribbean Thought. But I think it's available. If you go to my YouTube channel, it is available. The one that we did last week, and I created a new playlist. It's called Caribbean Thought 2024. And that's the first lecture that's up there. So the one that we did on the first week is available. You guys want to review this. This is going to be available before next week class. And so there is one lecture last week that we did that's not available. And this one, these two will be available. The first one is available right now. It's available on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and also on my YouTube channel. It's available. So you can subscribe, and you can to the link and so on and so forth. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I pray that God will continue to bless you and keep you, and that you will have an amazing time with me in this class. All right. Take care.
Bye, sir.
Okay, sir. Same to you.
Same to you.